Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today is actually the day before Thanksgiving that I'm shooting this, but I thought I could still get this recipe out in time for those of you who have other holiday meals you plan on making something like this for. So, one of the reasons I started my YouTube channel is because a lot of the things I do when it comes to making certain dishes, I don't have a written recipe on. I just throw it together, and it might change a little bit each year as I make it. It just depends on what I have on hand, and this is one of those recipes. So YouTube gives me a way that I can show you visually what I'm doing. And by the way, I'm making cranberry sauce, which is actually a mixed fruit sauce. It's probably more everything else than it is cranberries, but it does still start with cranberries. And what I have here, I pulled out of the freezer, I bought some of these last year and stocked up on them, is 12 ounces of cranberries. So sometimes when I see them at the store, I'll, on a good price, usually in the holidays, I'll buy a few bags and then just store them in the freezer so they're there when I need them. And for me, 12 ounces is plenty because usually I'm the only one that even eats cranberry sauce, even though I do all this other stuff to it. And right here I have about a pint of my homegrown blueberries. These have got to be at least no later than 2018 because I've since started freezing my blueberries into jars. So I didn't get a year written on this, so I don't know. So I dumped that in there with the cranberries. And normally I'll put about a pint of homegrown raspberries in there, but my freezer I keep those in, I'm thinking they're way at the bottom and I didn't feel like digging them out. But I did have my strawberries from 2020, our own homegrown strawberries, ready to go. So obviously I had the jar full, and as it thaws, anytime you freeze fruit like this fresh, it's going to take up half the amount of space as it did when you first put it in there, which is fine. Now I got a lot of liquid in here. I'm dumping the whole thing just like I did with the blueberries because some of that liquid's going to help cook the whole thing, especially those cranberries. So I'm dumping that in there. But raspberries are a really good option. So this year I'm actually substituting the raspberries for the strawberries. Okay, let's kind of stir that in there. You see what that looks like there. I just love the beautiful colors they all make when they're mixed together. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do, I've got 2 mandarin oranges here. I think these are mandarins. Patrick just picked them up this morning at the store, and I just chopped them up after I peel them. Now, when I'm using organic oranges of any kind, satsumas, tangerines, whatever they are, clementines, sometimes I'll leave the peels on if they're organic, but getting organic citrus fruit around here doesn't happen often. It's usually a hard thing to come by. So in that case, I do like to take the peels off because that's where you're going to have most of your issues is in the peels when you're talking fruits that are not organic. So I'm thinking, according to the size of this, 2 of these will probably be good. Let me mix it up and look. I might add a third. Really like that citrus flavor in there when I'm doing this. I think I'll go ahead and add 1 more. And as you can see, I don't have any real rhyme or reason on how I chop them up. I just got to get the job done. Remember, I said today I'm shooting this as the day before Thanksgiving, and I still have a chocolate cream pie to make and some pumpkin cookies and the stuffing, the wild rice stuffing. I'm going to be marinating my turkey again this year in homemade wine, my homemade apple wine that I made last year from our own homegrown apples. And so I did that last year with the turkey, and boy, it sure turned out tasty when I did that. Just made it tender and yummy. So I got to get that marinating here soon. Okay, now there's actually quite a bit of liquid with all the berries in there and the oranges. That's probably going to be plenty. Just in case though, I did thaw out some of the apple juice that I pressed out from last year as well. And I'm going to start by dumping just a little bit of that in there. And then as it's cooking, I may dump some more. So what I'm going to do now is take this into the other room to our wood stove, because this is the time of year we got that wood stove going all the time. So I like to cook on that and rather than using public power. All right, well, I just stuck the sauce here on the wood stove, so it hasn't really started cooking yet. It's got to warm up first. But what you do if you've never cooked made cranberry sauce from cranberries, raw cranberries, like right here, what's going to happen is as this starts cooking and heating up, these berries are going to start popping. And you just keep cooking it until they all get done popping. And everything's well cooked in there. And you'll even hear it. Well, a few of them have started popping, but you can see it's boiling pretty good, and this is what you want. And when you're doing a mixed berry thing like this, then eventually this is all going to become pretty much the same color. It'll be a little harder to distinguish the strawberries from the cranberries and the blueberries, even the orange slices, but it does make a nice flavor. And the nice thing about mixing in them sweeter fruits like the oranges and the blueberries and the strawberries, that helps make up the difference of the tartness of the cranberries, which means even if you do decide to add some kind of sugar or honey to it, you won't have to add near as much. And of course I've got the apple juice in there, which adds some sweetness on its own as well. So I'm going to keep cooking this, and I'm going to let, what happens is the cranberries, the pectin in the cranberries is going to also help to thicken this sauce and then just cook it down a little bit more. Then when it's done cooking, I'll show you what I do next. All right, well, the cranberry sauce is done cooking, and you can see right here the color, like I said, was going to happen. It's turned out pretty uniform, so it's a little harder to make out the difference between all the berries, but that's okay. And one thing you want to remember is that just like with jam, once you take it, once it starts to cool down, it's going to thicken up. So when I first took it off the heat, it was a lot more runny than this. But I can see it's already starting to thicken up, even though you can see the steam coming off of the spoon. But I wanted to get it to cool down a little bit before I decide to add the honey. So the first thing I want to do, though, is I want to taste the sauce as it is now and see if I even want to add any sweetener to it, which I'm sure I will. But let me taste it, and then I'll gauge how much honey I'm going to put in there by that. Okay, so it tastes really good, but yes, it's very tart, and so a little sweetener, a little bit of sweetness in there is going to really help that. So I'm going to start off with 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons. So approximately, and then I'm going to mix that in well. Now I like to do this. I don't want to add the honey in before I cook it or as it's cooking or while it's still really hot, because I want to try to keep all the benefits of that raw honey in there. Okay, still pretty tart. Let me blend it some more. And then again, adding it while it's still warm is going to help the honey to mix better, rather than waiting until it's completely cooled down. All right, well, I added just a couple more tablespoons, and I think that should be just right. And now what I'm going to do, I've been wanting to do for a long time, but every year I never have them on hand, is adding walnuts. I love walnuts in cranberry sauce. However, Patrick, when he was smelling this while it was cooking, because, oh boy, the strawberries just gave it a really nice aroma, he decided he was going to try some, even though he doesn't really like cranberries either. And I said, well, I was going to put walnuts in it. And he's like, oh, well, never mind. And I said, you know what? I'll just separate it, since I'm putting the walnuts in last. I'll just separate it in half and put walnuts in half and none in the other. Add that in there. Normally, I would have just put the walnuts in first and then added the cranberry sauce to the bowls. But since I got to separate them out. Now, these are the walnuts I've been putting up in stores. I've been getting them from Costco and then vacuum sealing them with the chamber that Patrick made into the jars like this. So I'm not even sure if I'll be able to get this open without Patrick's help, because the one thing that vacuum sealer does, it seems like it seals these even better than they were when they had the green olives that I bought from Costco, and I had to open it up. All right, well, I went ahead and just did the pry method with the spoon. Being very careful, though, you don't want to distort. If you want to re-vacuum seal this again, you don't want to distort the rim of your lid. So in order to be able to vacuum seal it again, I got to keep that nice and straight. But if you put a spoon underneath the edge and just pry really gently and slowly until you hear that escape of air, and then immediately stop, and then you should be able to get it open just fine. So This one's got a little bit less in it. And I'm just putting them in whole. I love walnuts. And I don't know, however many, just like anything else, however much you want to put in there. Without honey, you can put more or less than I did. Just taste it as you go. This is why I just don't use measurements. Since I change everything every year, never know exactly how much I'm going to make, then that changes the actual amount of honey or walnuts or whatever I'm going to use in there anyway. So just add the walnuts or whatever you want, or leave them out according to what looks good to you. I'm thinking maybe another handful will be good, since I really like them walnuts. So now all I got to do is put the lids on and let it chill overnight, and then it will be all set up for tomorrow. And then however you choose to eat it, I actually really like, this is the one thing I really like to put whipped cream on and eat it more like a dessert rather than a side for the turkey and stuffing. But however you want to use it anyway, this is how I make my cranberry sauce. It's more, like I said, it's actually more of a mixed berry sauce than it is cranberry, because it's got as much of the other berries and the oranges as it does cranberries itself. So that's also, like I said, that's a good way to break up the flavoring too, and just maybe even make it more appealing to people that might not like cranberry sauce at all. Oh, and well, I'm talking about it since, you know, I'm trying to get this out before other holiday meals. And like I said, today's the day before Thanksgiving 2020 that I'm shooting this. I did get the turkey in the pan so it can marinate for the next 24 hours. I added my homemade apple wine. And then I also sprinkled on some homegrown dehydrated sage and some granulated garlic and granulated onion, as well as a little bit of my homemade seasoned salt. I just keep coming back to it and taking the turkey baster and squirting that wine over the top of it, and I'll keep doing that until I go to bed, and then just let it sit. And then tomorrow I'll stuff it with my wild rice stuffing and then bake it. And I got the wild rice cooking on the stove right now to make the stuffing. And if you're interested in how I make those, I'll put links down below to the pumpkin cookies that I'm going to be making here in just a minute. I actually started filling the bowl with the flour, and the chocolate cream pie, because that's the other thing I got to get made today. And oh yes, and the seafood dip, so because I'm making salmon dip to go with some crackers tomorrow. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you another idea of something you can do for your holiday meals, whatever holiday it is. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.